The worst ways people have died, part 5. A man once took his wife and 2 children to the beach for a picnic in Dubai, and his daughter went swimming in the ocean. But she then started to drown. The lifeguards rushed to rescue her, but the father stopped them, saying that if they touched his daughter, it would dishonor her. He fought with them until his daughter finally drowned. The police then arrested him on the spot. Ali Redshaw was working in a company when her hand got stuck in a meat grinder. A coworker managed to turn it off in a few seconds, but by then it was too late and she lost her hand. However, she did survive. But a woman named Jill Greninger wasn't so lucky. She fell into a meat grinder in Pennsylvania and was killed instantly. Finally, Aura Garcia was walking over a drawbridge in East Boston when the bridge started to lift for a boat to pass. She got trapped between the 2 plates of the bridge and screamed for help. The bridge operator heard her and lowered the bridge, but by then it was too late, and she was crushed to death.
The longest prison sentences in history. At number 5 is Joseph Legend. He has served 67 years and 54 days in prison, and he was released earlier this year. He was convicted of murder at the age of 15. He was released at 83. At number 4 is Joseph Phillips, who served 68 years and 236 days. He was convicted in 1952 of raping a 5-year-old girl. He was paroled in March 2021. Third, with only 9 more days in prison, is Paul Goodell Jr. He served 68 years and 245 days. He was incarcerated in 1911 at the age of 17. He was released in 1980 at the age of 86. Once released, he died in a retirement home 7 years later at the age of 93. In second place, and the only non-American on the list, is an Australian man by the name of Charles Fawcett. He was sentenced to life imprisonment after murdering an elderly man and stealing his boots. And before number 1, right, I'll go to prison next in the comments and leave your autocorrect finished. He'll write that you'll go to jail. And in number 1, it's Francis Clifford Smith. He's currently serving 72 years and 90 days. He was also sentenced to death for the murder of a night watchman on his way out of a nightclub. But his sentence was changed to life imprisonment in 1954, 2 hours before his scheduled execution. He was lucky.
Next week you love me. For both weeks I get money.
The video I just showed you shows the last 2 seconds of these men's lives. This is 21-year-old Michael Owen and 20-year-old Kyle Careford. Michael and Kyle lived in the United Kingdom. They were best friends, and one night in 2015, they took a mix of illegal and prescription drugs. After they took these drugs, these 2 best friends decided to hop in a car and start driving. Along the ride, one of them started recording this drive, and there's some disturbing things that are happening. You can see that their faces are messed up from the drugs they've taken, and they're constantly pushing the speed limit as fast as they can go, going 90 miles an hour on tight, winding roads filled with other cars. At one point during this drive, Michael, who was a passenger in the car, started to say, "You're going 90, boys, slow down." But it was too late. While he was speeding, unlicensed driver Kyle lost control of the car and smashed the vehicle into a wall next to a church. And almost immediately, the both of them lost their lives. You can actually see photos of the impact zone right here from where that fatal crash occurred. Now, this crash was pretty big news in the United Kingdom when it happened, but Michael's mother went on the record after all of this and stated that she blames her son for the decisions he made that night. And she said that she's glad the video's out there so that it can stop future people from making the same terrible decisions.
This teenager became concerned for her ex and tried to help him. Little did she know she was about to be brutally killed. Lauren Asley was 18 years old from Wayland, Massachusetts. She began dating Nathaniel Fujita when the pair were in high school together. Nathaniel was a popular football player. The pair were described as being quite on and off. On the 1st of April 2011, she decided to end the relationship with Nathaniel. However, it did not go down very well at all, and his friends reported that he became depressed and withdrawn. He stopped doing things he used to enjoy doing, and he just didn't seem to care about life anymore. In summer 2011, the pair attended the same graduation party. It was reported that at the party, Nathaniel got quite jealous of when Lauren was talking to other boys. Nathaniel got quite drunk, and Lauren's mum was actually at the party, and Lauren ran up to her crying. She said that Nathaniel wouldn't leave her alone and was harassing her. Now, Nathaniel got so angry at this party that he punched the tent that everybody was in and caused it to collapse. He was then asked to leave the party. It was reported that Nathaniel started drinking quite heavily and becoming even more depressed. His mum actually got so worried about him that she reached out to Lauren. She asked Lauren if she could help and maybe speak to him, and Lauren agreed because she was concerned. Lauren agreed to chat to him and meet him at his house on the 3rd of July 2011. Tragically, she had no idea she would not leave the house alive. She texted him stating "here" and entered the house at approximately 7:05 p.m. Nathaniel lured her into the garage, slit her throat and strangled her with a bungee cord. He then drove her car to Town Beach and disposed of the keys down a drain. After running home, he put her body in his car and dumped her in a secluded area nearby. Obviously, Lauren's family got really concerned when she didn't get home. Nathaniel, as obviously the last person she was meeting up with, was reported as a suspect. Police found bloodstains in his garage and a big bag full of clothes soaked in blood. Lauren's body was found not long after. Nathaniel's defense in court stated that he was suffering a massive depressive episode and therefore should not be held criminally responsible. However, luckily he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
This is the Pitbull video, one of the hardest cartel execution videos to watch, explained. The video that I'm about to explain is extremely graphic and I don't recommend searching for it. The video begins with the man lying on his back on the ground, and 2 men are holding his legs open. He's being restrained. And in total, there is 5 perpetrators and 1 victim. And also 2 pit bull dogs. Apparently, this is the victim's punishment for allegedly doing something with a kid or to a kid. The victim is naked, and at the start of the video, the dog has done most of the work. The dog already ripped off the man's privates, and it's just a bloody mess. The dog continues to rip pieces of flesh off of where his privates used to be, and the victim is being held down and he is also gagged so he can't scream. But sometimes the gag came loose, and at this point you could hear the man scream in pain. The victim was even talking, but I couldn't translate it, but that means he was completely conscious during this, which I can't even imagine the pain. As a man, this might be one of the worst videos out there. Funky Town is bad, Ghost Rider is bad, but as a man, I can't imagine anything more painful than a pit bull ripping off your junk while you're still alive. Not many people mention this video with the other disturbing ones, but it's definitely up there. There's not any information about the victim after the video. I don't know if he died, but it's safe to assume he did. He lost a lot of blood, and if a dog eats your privates, you will most likely get an infection and die from it. All in all, this video is very graphic, very real, and very disturbing. Please do yourself a favor and never go searching for this video, especially if you're a man.
Weird crime. Most self-defense techniques that are typically outlawed by mixed martial arts are very effective in the street, such as the eye gouge. But a woman in Colorado took this technique in the wrong direction, and I gotta warn you, it's disturbing. In Colorado Springs, Grace Todd was drinking with her husband when he said some things and it apparently triggered her to attack him. Using both thumbs, she gouged his eyes out and placed one of them into his mouth, and he ended up choking on his own airway. The man died, and his wife was subsequently charged.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, she's in bed now.
I mean, she could probably get charged with child porn.
Who, she can?
Mm-hmm.
She's 11 years old.
She's creating it, right?
She's 11 years old.
Doesn't matter. She's still making porn.
No, she's not. She's being manipulated by a grown-ass adult on the
Is she
internet.
taking pictures now?
You guys have a nice evening.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Run, rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run.
The next ad you will probably see will be for Temu. Temu is a company that was launched in the United States in September of 2022, and by June of 2023 they made over $1 billion in revenue. Considering their prices are suspiciously cheap, that is pretty impressive. With their success, I am forced to wonder if they are just like Shein, if not worse. They have over 10,000 employees, mainly located in China, and there has been quite a bit of controversy. By the end of 2021, they reported 3 employees had died died, one of which was a 23-year-old that collapsed while walking home from work around midnight. Since then, no more reports have been made about the employees, but it could just be the fact that they're trying to keep those hidden. In June of 2023, a committee of the US House of Representatives stated that, unlike Shein, Temu does not maintain even the facade of a meaningful compliance with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, making them at high risk of having forced labor inside their factories. According to PMAG.com, they state that Temu has also been in trouble countless times for copying other products and selling them at lower prices. Employees at Temu are believed to be working in the 996 system. That entails you working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, totaling 72 hours. Do we have another Shein controversy on our hands? Let me know.
My father. He is now in hell for eternity as a traitor to his country. It is said that those who commit treason and betray others occupy the lowest pits of hell for all time.
This is the story of Justin Moan, 32, was arrested nearly 100 miles from a grisly crime scene where he severed his father's head off and posted it on a YouTube video. Authorities say Moan's mother found her husband's body without its head in a bathroom. In a 14-minute video, apparently posted by Moan, the suspect rails against federal employees and calls his father a traitor.
This video is chilling because just 15 minutes after this little girl posted this TikTok, her life was senselessly taken. On February 17th, 2021, a 9-year-old girl named Felicia Konashuk, who lived in the Russian city of Chita, posted a video to her TikTok claiming that her neighbor had been pounding on her door for over an hour. Here is the transcript of her TikToks. Pause to read. The incident started after Felicia's father left her and her brother alone to go to the store. Eventually, the neighbor stopped knocking, and Felicia chatted with her friend about the TikTok video that she'd posted, and her friend invited her to meet her at the park to take her mind off of things. 15 minutes after Felicia posted the video, she heard a soft knocking on the door, so she went to answer it, thinking it was her friend or her father. Before she could answer the door, the neighbor opened fire and took Felicia's life. Her father returned moments later to find her, and she took her last breath in his arms. The neighbor was 33-year-old Vasily Dunay, who had been getting increasingly more aggravated over the sound of some home repairs Felicia's father had been doing. He was also extremely drunk at the time. He pled guilty to the crime and was given a 17-year sentence to be served in a penal colony in Siberia. Asley was fully aware that there were children in the home, so do you think 17 years is long enough for something that reckless?
This is why you should be careful when choosing your roommates. 33-year-old Joshua Michael Palmer and 21-year-old Shauna Haynes, and they worked together at a restaurant called the Old Spaghetti Factory. April of 2016, Shauna had moved in with Joshua at his apartment that he rented. Joshua ended up developing romantic feelings for Shauna, and he wanted to be together with her, but she rejected his offer and said that they could just be friends. He then asked her if they could be intimate, and she rejected him for a second time. Joshua then sent a text to Shauna saying, "If I can't have you the way that I want you, I'm afraid I'll do something that I'll regret." Obviously, this frightened Shauna, but she had no idea what he would actually do. The two of them ended up in their downtown area to go eat at a barbecue restaurant, and after some time, Shauna left to go meet up with this guy, and her and that guy ended up at the apartment she shared with Joshua. Joshua stayed at that restaurant and ended up drinking some more, and that's when he met a girl there. Joshua ended up taking that girl back to his apartment, and they were going to try to be intimate, but he was having some trouble down there. That's when Joshua started watching Shauna and her date be intimate together. After watching, Joshua sent a text to Shauna saying, "This is not cool, I'm going to unalive myself," and then he told everyone to get out except for Shauna. He then sent a series of texts to Shauna's phone confessing his love for her, and he ended up texting the girl that he had brought over originally and apologized and said that he ended up being intimate with Shauna and that Shauna ended up leaving because she was afraid of falling in love with him. On April 6th, residents of the apartments noticed that there was a suitcase in the trash bins and that those bins were unusually heavy. Later that day, one of the residents noted that the trash bin was moved and the suitcase was on the floor. They inspected the suitcase and it was covered in insects, and they noticed that there was human flesh and hair. Eventually, the police were called, and that's when they found a woman in that suitcase. Shortly after this discovery, Joshua had reported Shauna as missing. Police soon identified the body as Shauna's, and Joshua ended up talking to the police, and he gave them 3 different stories on when he had last saw her. Her autopsy revealed that she had died from strangulation. She also suffered blunt force trauma to her skull, mouth, and rectum. On April 8th, Joshua was charged with Shauna's murder. Police recovered 5 deleted videos on Joshua's phone, and it showed him SAing Shauna. Joshua was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Ever just sit in your car after dropping someone off, or maybe you just finished your grocery shopping, or you're running errands, or you just pulled into a parking spot and you're getting organized before stepping out of the car? Well, here is a reminder for everyone sitting in their car in a space like a parking lot: make sure your doors are locked. And here's why. Slider crimes, which is when a thief crouches down and sneaks into an unlocked car to steal valuables or the car itself, are not new, but they seem to be trending again. Just recently, a woman pulled into a parking spot and a man slid into the passenger side of her car and tried to take her purse from her. She started to scream. She resisted that attempt and honked her horn to direct attention to her. Thankfully, she was unharmed, but what a scary ordeal. Now, her vehicle's doors unlock as soon as she puts the car into park. So this is something to be mindful of if your car does the same thing. Slider crimes happen so fast and often happen at gas stations, convenience stores, and other parking lots when people are just focused on their day-to-day tasks. Here are some steps that you can take to reduce your chances of becoming a victim. Always lock your car door and turn it off no matter how long you're going to be out. That includes even if you're just getting gas. Those with keyless entry or push-start ignitions, never leave your key fob inside. Always take it with you. Always one of my favorites, always be mindful of your surroundings. Be wary of any suspicious-looking people lurking around nearby. Pay attention. Criminals love to prey on people who are just distracted in general. And please never confront a slider suspect. They may panic and might use violence to get away. Instead, get a good description and call the police immediately. Hope this reminder helps. Stay safe.
What was Megan Thee Stallion talking about when she referenced Megan's Law? If this law existed, 7-year-old Megan Conca wouldn't have been SA'd and killed. Jesse Timandekas had served time for 2 previous convictions for SA against children. But still, he was able to move across the street from 7-year-old Megan Conca and her family. Her parents had no idea that the man who seemed to be chilling in his yard every time Megan went out to play or draw with sidewalk chalk was watching her, and waiting for the time to strike. On July 29, 1994, he lured the child into his house under the pretense that she could play with his new puppy. He SA'd her, but because he didn't want her to report it, he strangled her with a belt, and he dumped her body in the nearby park. And the next day, he confessed to police and led them to the dump site. Evidence included bloodstains, hair samples, and a bite mark on Jesse's hand because Megan had tried to fight back. He was initially given the death penalty, but the state of New Jersey changed this to life in prison without parole. And because Megan's family had no idea that they were living across the street from someone who had committed violent crimes against children, they fought to have a federal law passed in Megan's name. Megan's Law requires law enforcement to make info on offenders public. By being a registered offender, you're added to the offender registry that includes your name, crimes, and address, and you must alert the government if you move. Before Megan's Law, only 5 states required people like this to register, as required in the Jacob Wetterling Act, which I covered in a separate video. Together, the Wetterling Act and Megan's Law protect the public in 2 ways. 1, the registry itself, and 2, community notification for the public. Megan's Law would have given Megan's family the chance to protect her. And looking up the list of offenders in your area is something I recommend for everybody to do, and let me know if you want me to make a tutorial on how to do that. So when Megan Thee Stallion referenced Megan's Law in her newest diss track, she was referencing the fact that Nicki Minaj is married to a offender. If you like this video, give me a follow and stay safe out there.
This is the oven incident, one of the worst ways somebody has ever died, explained. This takes place in England at a company called Piranha. This company makes plastic kayaks. This is Alan Catterall, and he worked for Piranha for 12 years. But that would come to a tragic end on December 23rd, 2010. An employee named Mark Francis noticed there was a technical issue with this oven right here. Now, Mark Francis happens to be the man who's marrying Alan Catterall's daughter. Mark shut off the power to the oven for about an hour. He climbed into the oven even though it was still a little hot, and he noticed there was a problem with one of the ball bearings. He fixed it and it was all good to go. He then powered the oven back on. But roughly 10 to 15 minutes later, they noticed smoke pouring out of the oven, which isn't normal. And when they opened the oven doors, they saw the burnt and deceased body of Alan Catterall. You see, Alan would go into the oven, which is something he would do all the time. He went in there with a scraping machine to scrape off some of the melted plastic. Now, Mark Francis never saw him go into the oven. So when Mark Francis powered the oven back on, there is a mechanism that shuts the doors automatically. And this is exactly what happened. Now, after they found Alan, they were able to tell that he was trying to use his scraping tool, or a crowbar, to pry open the doors. And if he was screaming for help, there was no way anybody would have heard him because the machinery inside of the building is very loud. So for at least 10 minutes, Alan was being cooked and burnt alive. There was no escape latch built into the oven. There was nowhere to go, nobody heard him screaming. The doors were too heavy for him to open with the crowbar, so he had to burn alive for 10 whole minutes. They found him with extreme burns all over his body, but he eventually died from shock. If you're wondering how hot it was inside of the oven, well, it was 536 degrees Fahrenheit. Mark Francis would go on to say that he was never fully trained on how to operate the oven, and that he was never told any safety procedures. Alan's daughter would completely forgive Mark Francis for what happened. She said that she knows it was not his fault and it was the fault of the company's. And Alan's daughter still married Mark Francis. The company was then charged with corporate manslaughter. Peter Mackert, who was the director of the company, was found guilty, and he was then fined £200,000. Rest in peace to Alan Catterall, and this death is just awful.
The most terrifying prisoners of all time. This is Jamie Osuna, the man with 1,000 faces. In 2017, Jamie was sentenced to life in prison for the 2011 murder and torture of a woman from Bakersfield. During his court case, you can see him smirking, rolling his eyes, and mocking the family of the deceased, even giving a thumbs up as the judge announces his sentence. From there, he is transported to Corcoran State Prison, where things got worse. Way worse. He is given a cellmate, Luis Romero, who had spent more than 2 decades in prison himself. On March 9th, 2019, guards checked their cell and find the most gruesome scene. Romero had been beheaded and several of his body parts were removed and fashioned into a necklace worn by Jamie. Ha 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 had been written on the wall in blood, as well as the man with 1,000 faces.